Hello everybody, and welcome back to the restoration of this Nieuport 24, a design by David Boddington. There's been a slight break in this task because very fortunately I've had some great flying opportunities over the last week or so. 4 flying sessions and 1 trip to a large scale fly-in at Teesside. So it's been a really action-packed few days, and that's left little time to work on this model. But yesterday I pushed on and finished some of the work that needed to be done. The radio gear has now been installed. More of that in a moment. And I have one task left to do before I can say this is ready for a maiden, and that's to add some rigging. But before we talk about that, perhaps something about the model. One of the joys I find in working with any scale model is doing a little bit of research on the prototype. And this has been a really interesting process to go through for the Nieuport 24. When I got this model given to me at the strip, it was in a pretty sorry state, but it had the remnants of this colour scheme on it. So I looked it up and found out that it was the colour scheme of a famous French air ace who actually finished with 43 kills at the end of the Great War, ranked 3rd in the French contingent, and his name is Charles Nungesser, or Nungesser. I'm sure I've mispronounced that. He was quite a character by all accounts. A sort of clue to his personality is he came up with this famous logo design, the Black Heart, to strike fear into the enemy that he would face, the skull, the coffin and the candelabras. And no doubt he did that. I think he also struck a little bit of fear into his superiors, because he was frequently having run-ins with them. He would crash a plane, be injured, be confined to ground duties, disobey them, take off, get another kill, and then quickly end up in the glasshouse again. So he became a bit of a hero with the French press and the French public, as you can imagine. I understand actually that the tricolour stripes appeared on his plane after he'd been shot at from some friendly ground fire, and in an attempt to avoid that happening again, he instructed the ground crew to paint on the French tricolour. I'm sure that it was popular with the press as well. So quite a character, loved fast cars, loved women, loved fighting the Hun, and he seemed to thrive on adventure. He came to an end attempting to cross the Atlantic along with his navigator, Cully. They were never found, and a couple of weeks later Lindenberg managed to successfully cross the Atlantic on the easier route from west to east. They were attempting to go from east to west. So that's something about the background, and it's always interesting to find that out. I'll show you how I've set up the radio. It's all guesswork because I've got no idea of the throws. So if I turn this on, let's have a look. I've set up 3 rates. So the lower rate gives me that on the rudder. Now I suspect that's going to be more than enough. I might be wrong, because it's a whole surface that's moving, not just part of the surface. I have a middle rate, and I have a full rate. Now I'll be surprised if that's required, but you'd never know when you're talking about a 3-channel model. It's normal practice for me to take off in the higher rates. That gives you a chance to get out of trouble if things aren't quite working out. And then I drop down to a middle rate or lower rate once the aircraft's built up speed. And that's what I intend tackling with this. So what we're going to do today is actually add some rigging, and because the lower wings are only held on with dowels, it is going to have a slight functional use. It's not just going to be for show. And that's what I'm going to show you how I go about it now. Let's get set up. How am I going to go about this then? Well, here you have some material which I've used in the past. In this case, it's elastic. I've used it on various models. If you want to see how I used it on the SE5 build, look back at some of my previous videos. In fact, while I'm talking about that, if you've got this far, you're obviously interested in what I do, could I ask you to subscribe and maybe give it a thumbs up? Anyway, less of the commercial. Now, this stuff is very effective on a model. Although it's transparent, it actually has a metallic-y sort of sheen catching the light and works very well. And it's fine if you're not after a functional rigging. So that's an option, but in this case I want a little bit more. You can then go to fishing trace, nylon covered wire, so obviously it doesn't rust up. And this is what I've used in another build on the Junkmeister, because it's functional and it comes in various strengths, depending on obviously the fish you're trying to catch. And you can pick the one that's the most appropriate to the scale of model that you're using. What I'm going to use on this model is a very fine wire. It's one of the lightest wires I've found actually, and I think that'll look really effective on this model. I'm going to do it by producing little crimps. I'll cut short lengths of this tube, and I'll also then cover them with heat shrink after they've been crimped, and that hopefully will also impart some degree of rigidity in the setup. Although it's the wings are actually quite strong now that the struts have been put in place. A word about them. Actually, let's have a look at them. If I pick the model up and we'll have a closer look, I hope you can see there. The bottom one is, the bottom of the strut is attached via a tube and a hook in the wing. And on the underside, this is going to be more awkward, there's a wire that goes through two tubes attached to the top of the strut, and that slides through and locks the upper portion of the V-shaped strut. It's quite effective, I think. So let's crack on and we'll start making the crimp up, and we'll look at the design. We'll look at the design of the rigging layout. This then is the concept drawing for the rigging. I may be adapting this slightly, but let's see if we can make sense of it. So on the upper wing, there's a wire coming down from the front and the rear of the V-shaped strut, and there's also a wire going from the strut down to the undercarriage leg, and that passes through a tube in the fuselage, and in this case it's shown tensioned with a rubber band. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that, and out and repeat it on the other side. And then for the lower wing, there's a V-shaped wire comes from the bottom of the strut through tubes on the upper cabin and then down the other side. Now I think I'm going to alter that slightly, and I might actually have individual bracing wires attached to the cabin rather than going through tubes. We'll see how it goes. That's part of the thing I need to explore. Let's get cracking. I think this is how I'm going to tackle this. This is the route for part of the rigging. From the undercarriage, up to the strut, down through the fuselage tube, back up to the front strut, and then down to the undercarriage. That will be one part of the rigging completed. So I'll make a connection round here, then feed it round, adding the crimps as required. This is going to be the first crimp. I've decided not to put the heat shrink on. Let's keep it simple. So I've pushed that bit of aluminium tubing on. I'm going to crimp it now. Put a little bit more wire through because that can always be trimmed off. There's the first crimp in. Then I'll pull the tension on the wire. That's now fixed. Tell I would never be a fisherman. I'd get into knots all the time. So I need to feed that through. Don't want to impart too much tension at this stage. I've fed it through the wire at the top. Not too much, but I want a little bit more than that. I hope you can see that that wire is now under tension. I'm going to crimp here, and that'll hold the tension onto the undercarriage wire. I've already got a piece of aluminium tubing on. That's crimped, so that's maintaining that tension. And now this one, I've got enough to go across there. I could go over. And back and down. No, I'll keep it simple. Through there, through the tube, and out the other side and repeat. That's the theory anyway. Yeah, I'll make a couple more crimps and then that'll be that part of the wiring done. Or rigging done. This is the last part of this rigging process. I'm not convinced you can actually see what I'm doing. It's a bit like a flea circus because the wires are so fine on the video, but rest assured, to the naked eye, not the artificial eye, they show quite well. So I've pushed the little ferrules on. I think that's the correct term for them. Happy with that, and when you're happy with it, you keep it under a little bit of tension, not too much, you don't want to twist the wings. That's that crimped, and this one crimped. And there we go, I'll show you this. Oh, there you go. I hope you can see them. The light's catching them nicely. I can cut the excess off here. There'll be a little bit of excess here. So that's the first part done. Now I need to go do quite a simple one for the next part, from the upper here through the tube and out the other side. That's a straightforward one. And then these get a little bit more complicated from the bottom of the strut up to the cabin. I think I can probably do that in one run of wire per side. I'll crack on and do the rear ones and then we'll see what they look like. The bracing wire's done for the upper wing. Now to do from the lower strut to the upper cabin, and then we're done. Well, I've brought it out in the natural daylight to have a look at it. I'm calling this done now. We're just waiting for the right weather conditions. Obviously it's blowing a hoolie now. We've had 4 or 5 days of decent weather. You can't expect any more than that in the UK. But there you go, done. Rigging completed. I hope you can see it in the natural light there, glistening. It looks great. I hope it flies. Only one way to find out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for bearing with me on this build, or refurbishment so to speak. Really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Maybe it inspires you to save a model from an early grave. Bye now. Take care.